concepts and then see how well we can leverage or synergize these things. And in the context of FOSS cells, so I'm not going to give a theory on the various business models of FOSS, which is a enough a published subject, so a theoretical session would not be of interest. But we look at what can be done in all these FOSS cells in your colleges, where you promote entrepreneurship, leveraging the entire gamut of knowledge base that is there in the community. So when we talk about FOSS businesses, like FOSS-based entrepreneurship or FOSS-linked entrepreneurship, would mean that the business that offers services related to an open source software or technology which has been up there. It could be offering services bundling around it, or you might be using those technologies and softwares which are already available there, and then creating your own application or a product. And so personally, in my experience, I've seen companies who have come up, they've gained expertise in a particular technology, and then they become experts, or they become the trainers, they become the consultants, they become probably specialist developers for functionalities and all those stuff. So that's one group of people. The second, a lot of the startups, when they have an initial idea to reach the market at the earliest with minimum of effort, cost, and all those things, they see that they have a lot of reusables or existing functionalities, applications built in and available with a lot of documentation. It's a repository of knowledge that they can use it, and then as we go along, they can keep contributing to it also. So we'll come into the whole set of actors who play in this, but starting 85 from the theory where that knowledge is free or the software is free, I think all the degrees of freedom which was spoken about, and then to creation of the largest, when all of us work on that, the Linux system. That was in the 90s, and then the entire movement which we have seen over the years. So these are the two reasons how business can work on it, and there have been various generations of FOSS businesses. If you really look at it over a time series, you can see that there have been 2 or 3 generations, as people classify it, of businesses that have come from using or leveraging free and open source software. Well, I know there are debates on whether it's just free software or it's open source software and all those things. I'll not get into the philosophical part of it. I'll not get into the a very theoretical aspect of it. But I see that how will a software, how does it impact? So my background in the industry over the years, what I've seen that is the whole movement has since 1990 have changed the way the software industry has worked. It has literally transformed it. And the real proprietary or the so-called closed software groups have realized over the years that they're competing with a much more tech-savvy group of community, which is developing technology at a cheaper cost, at a much flexible and more robust, technologically robust thing, because it undergoes a lot of peer review, the community involvement, and other things. Now the software industry started adopting it, although it was like a polarized division earlier, but then now this has become mainstream, and the industry itself has started adopting it by making their own basic versions free or creating parallelly. I think there are different names to it. It's like a hybrid models. There are this dual licenses and all those stuff. So I think the models are there. It's all explained. But then I'm saying that they made their basic versions free so as to get in touch with the network, get in touch with the community at large. So you're creating a user base. You create a community version so that people work on it. See, end of the day, there are 2 or 3 key elements in this. One is the technology itself. Second is the user base, the developer community. Third is the user base as an end user customer, not necessarily the developer every time. And then you have this corporate who wants to make a business commercialization out of it. So from a very philosophical, the cathedral to market thing is always there. So all these players have to be satisfied. And so I think they started, and the corporates started looking at acquiring open source companies. So now that is where, from a valuation point of view, and I talk from a startup point of view, people are willing to invest in open source projects and startups, and there are very huge valuations which are happening, which you think over years, if you look at it, you would find out in the last 5 years has seen tremendous acquisitions, $1 billion acquisitions and valuations in the open source frontier. Now, from a startup ecosystem point of view, we've seen extensive use of open source software and hardware products, and not much in hardware, but then open source software for building up the products and services. As I told you, that reduces time, because generally when you have an idea, you have certain minimal period to reach the market, otherwise, or show you a MVP, minimum viable product, or show your POC that it really works, and convince somebody to put their money into your startup. So what to do that, you need to make it faster, and the best way is go back to this community where it is available, and then customize it, and quickly make it available. And not necessary that you always have the full range of expertise. So that is why, again, you have such a large group of community out there which can be used. And then reducing individual employees would reduce your cost also. So I think from a time, cost, effort perspective, I think this is much beneficial for you. And the second part is that technology already has a user base. It already has a community around it. And suddenly you put in a product which is related to that. There is a quick user base there to look at. So that's another struggle that the startups have, getting people to look at your product. So then here you have a community or a network which is already there. And obviously, since you are doing it cheap, you're going to be price competitive, and then the name carries around the developer communities, and there's a lot of word of mouth marketing. So I think this is a background on which we've seen the transformation in the software industry, which is a more prominent large scale industry, and also in the startup ecosystem over the last 5-6 years. Now, as we talked about, the major actors in the whole thing, as we said, was the developer. So initially, in probably the generation 1 kind of software, free software thing, it was software being written for the developers, by the developers, and being used by the developers. I think it's all a developer community. Very recently, we have investors coming into play. Earlier, it was academia-driven or philosophy-driven funding that has gone into it, or even the state-driven funding. So even things like FOSS as state-funded. So now we have real commercial funding coming into it. We have venture funding coming into it because they have seen business in this. There's a larger group of customers who are the end user of it, not necessarily the manufacturers of it. It could be an SME, it could be any person who uses the software. And there are a lot of this potential commercial business, the entrepreneurs which we speak about. I think these are the ones who either package it or create a product out of it, or do the services around this open source software. And finally, for the community and the commercial to coexist, you need a foundation or a regulatory body, right? So a non-profit foundation. So when almost all these places, you would see that they churn out a non-profit foundation which will drive the technology, and the commercial business which will drive the business. So I think that clarity has to be there. So I think a lot of these places today, from a second generation open source commercial entrepreneurs, you've seen these two different distinct units coming in. And definitely the community. You need end users who are trained, who are working towards it. Not necessarily contribute, but then people who are updating themselves on the development of the technology. So these are basically technology evangelists you need to have it. So now, why does this 5 years before, it wouldn't have made much of a interest to people if you went and said that I'm building this kind of business, and to a venture capitalist, you couldn't go and ask him for funding your open source project. But today, over the last 5-6 years, if you look at it, you have, the valuations of MongoDB would be around, I don't know, 30 to 50 billion dollars. Elastic would be around $10 billion. So, Databricks, it's around $5-6-7 billion. So this has been the evolution of the software, and the valuations are very high these days, and people are willing to invest. There are venture capitalists who are willing to invest in open source projects. So from a philanthropic investment or a state-driven investment, now it's really become a commercial investment. Yes, there are debates on whether you have diluted on your philosophy of this, but then commercialization is a different ballgame. I'm just now limiting myself to the commercial aspects of this running it. And for just to give a background before I throw into a few more points on how we go about doing it, The initial softwares that we spoke about, they were primarily trying to create a enterprise solution kind of stuff, your Red Hats or MySQL kind of guys, for database, and the other one for an operating system. But they struggled, but then they grew because there was a huge market and there was less of alternatives. And then there were these open source companies which are driven by the companies primarily in-house and then shared outside and all those kind of guys. And they also could monetize a lot of stuff. But there again, there was a problem of ownership as to, the community has a herd mentality. Like you work on a particular technology and then it moves, the entire school moves into another technology because of its limitation, the consistency of funding, and nobody kind of owns it or constantly ensures the funding for this. So in an attempt to differentiate, they all packaged it different, and there has to be some regulation. So, but then now when you really look at it, the companies, the corporates are driving this open source thing, and they found out models like your as a service model for the software, so that they really don't have to worry about the licenses, but they really charge them for the uses and the services they offer. And it is in this line that all your Elastics and MongoDBs and all those stuff have raised huge valuation, huge user bases. And these are now called as the generation of companies which are really dominant in the software business thing. Now, from our perspective, where we have seen in our startup ecosystems in colleges, a couple of things that we seriously lack. That's my personal experience as one. We're part of using open source software and probably building product around it initially. I think that some of our startups are doing. Gaining expertise and leveraging that as an expertise for consulting and services. There are people doing, like I think we have in our own fold one of our partners for development, like your FOSS Technologies and all those things. They are good in Drupal, so they have become experts in that. They now offer service on consulting on that. So that's one way of doing it. You offer services on. We had one of the good companies which I always appreciate as an into printing, that you have the Green Valley Tech here, who was kind of working much on LaTeX, and they are a publishing house in themselves. Actually, they do a lot of work on research publications and other stuff. We have a lot of other startups who packaged open source product, it's their own niche inputs and things, and then try and develop it and then make it available as a service for various people. So I think these startups are all there. So these models are always there. And even if your college-based startups want to use this, package it properly, create their own products based on open source technologies. From an investor point of view, my whole idea of talking so much was to say that there are investors willing to put their money into it, because they see the kind of valuation over the community builds around it and the valuation that they can create over a period of time. Now, having said that, the element called community is equally important, and it's becoming more and more robust because they are now doing the product manager role, because they determine which is a good technology. There are a lot of feedbacks that come in. It's a thorough peer review mechanism. But unfortunately, we have not been able to create too many contributors. We've been very good users. India in general and all of us have been very good users, but then we have not been able to contribute much. Though small attempts have been made even in places like FOSS also to do a bit of contribution towards FreeCAD, towards I think we did work on some Odoo platforms. We did work on Adampere and H5 and all this stuff. So I think we were on Blender, we tried to do something. So I think there are some center of excellences we are trying out, but we are not contributing much. That are for 2 or 3 reasons. One, there's an initial inertia because nobody has initiated them into it. And that is one of the key elements the FOSS cell has to do. People have to be exposed to it and say that there's nothing very mystic about it. It is quite simple, and we need to really expose them under the mentorship of somebody who's already a community player. Second is we need to probably work with them on smaller projects And there are a lot of people who are working on good projects in summer internships or the like what the Swatendra Malayalam Computing is doing in Google Summer of Code, or I think maybe a lot of mentor players are there. So if we can get them to really work on part of a large project and gain the confidence in terms of doing some coding and making your code available for public review or making it available for people to work on, I think that probably I suppose can take up some projects and make it offered to the for cells to work on it also. I think that is one another area. So the whole idea here is you need people who are well versed with technology, who are willing to contribute to a technology, and then only you can be a user of this technology and then come back to it. So I'm not seeing too much of funding from corporates directly into it, other than some trainings and also the initial trainings that they give. But then the startup companies who are working into it now, there are a lot of them who are creating foundations and willing to work and invest on their technologies they have been working on. So generally, these models I've said on the publishing or the printing technologies, or the specialist service provider model, any of these model, or the free core models or the cloud services models. And I think there are enough number of models that you'll probably just search out and find it. So the idea is expose them, make them aware of it. So the FOSS cell should do is to make them aware of FOSS, what it means, and what it means to be a technology contributor, user, or a community member. They need to be made aware of what is the kind of market that we are talking about, surely in terms of volume of business. Then the valuations will speak for themselves. You can see the kind of valuations. And then encourage them, if they are entrepreneurial in nature, to pick up some of these things and stitch together their solution and reach the market very fast. So your time to market is a very critical feature in terms of startups. So if you have an idea and if you don't hit the market in a very, very short time, either somebody else is already there or your idea is stale by that time. So the FOSS allows you, as I spoke earlier, a great opportunity to reach the market very fast, like at least help people see your MVP, the minimum viable product, and so that they can really look at your product and the idea in a much better way, rather than throwing up a presentation on a screen. It would be very good to see a working prototype. So I think that's very easy when you work with FOSS tools, and that's how I have seen people work on it. Second is there is a lot of these people who need, like we worked on, we had, I think probably sometime back in FOSS had thrown out options to SMEs and entrepreneurs to popularize some of the free softwares like the GNU Kata or the Odoo. And we said that you get a customer, you use this package and do the customization, then charge for it. So I think that's another business model, I think, which I cited Sixware, who's doing very good in Drupal for that matter. So now another area which I would like to tell you is, now we've been speaking about the software industry. I suppose we had started some work earlier on open hardware. And today, I think those of you who are working in the electronics domain would know that the design part of electronic chips and ESDM part, the design part, we have RISC-V as I think it played equivalent to the Linux in software. So the RISC-V based chip design is one area. So we had actually, I suppose, had initiated it, and along with the Trust Research Park, we are doing some level of research in CET. And so the hardware side is there. Any domain you pick up, you have specific tools available. And we had also compiled a website where called Alternatives. I think it is called alternatives.com, where we had compiled the entire FOSS alternatives to various projects. We had partnered with a few other partners like Incatech to work on design softwares like FreeCAD. So there have been quite a bit of emphasis. So I would urge the FOSS cells to pick up one area of technology or one area of domain, and then work with probably IC FOSS, and then build up expertise in that area, you would see a lot more contributors, users, and then probably entrepreneurs who might leverage on that. And yeah, I think with those, I'll probably hold for a moment, and if any of you who are actually working out on this FOSS cells want to ask any questions, I'll be happy to talk about it. Otherwise, can I throw it open for any questions as of now, or? Hello, moderator.
Yes, sir.
Ajay, I think
Yeah.
I can take a few questions if there are, and if they really want to know how what we can work on or something like that. So
Yeah. Then I think from participant side, then
anyone who wants to put up a question, and
no, I think
okay. No, I think that's fine. I think this is more to be done, so I don't think more than a lecture. I think so. So that's it. We have a FOSS entrepreneurship unit in IC FOSS, I understand, and it is doing pretty well. They have been incubating a hardware startup who's working, leveraging the IC FOSS expertise in LoRa network to build their parking solution. They are doing a solution already in Technopark, so I think that's going on well. I also understand that they are working with a lot of other startups. So I think there are quite a number of projects, and these projects do have a possibility. So every entrepreneur in the back of your mind is, will there be somebody to fund me? So my point, why I focused only on that primarily is you are very clear about the philosophy and the background. So, but then I'm also wanting to highlight that a bit of search would help you also understand that there are enough funding also possibilities in terms of FOSS projects and FOSS entrepreneurship, because people have started seeing the value, and it is today mainstream, and it is no longer a parallel. Though we've, I think our website on alternatives also might be up and it is updated, and you would see that almost all walks of life, all those issues that your startups come with to create various platforms or applications or products, there are enough things available already. You just need to stitch it, and rather than start from scratch. So that is one message I think probably the faculty coordinators should put it across to their entrepreneurs in school. But first of all, I think you should start with taking this inhibition off of getting into the then should know how to get into the Git and draw out a code and then try it out. So unless you try, you don't. I know there are a lot of user groups there, but then people should also be able to write a small functionality and then start, feel comfortable with it, so that you need to interact with the community. It is a two-way process. I agree that in the process of commercialization, we have diluted the philosophy a bit, because you know philosophy is the highest level at one end, and then that's where it's sacred sanctity is one. But then in real life pragmatic business, it's a commercial business. You do it for money, and you do it for valuation, and then that you can see in almost the third generation open source startups have all been acquired at a very high valuation, and that's ultimately the economics has to work out well. So this is not just a theoretical academic philosophy. The FOSS philosophy is it's a way of life. It's an economic system. So we need to make it viable and running also. So I think that's where I'll hold for the moment, because if that is fine, we'll go forward with that. Rajiv, otherwise, I think I'd request your team to probably specifically take it into one of the entrepreneurs who have already worked with you in terms of the LoRa network or even the other players, and then we can look forward. Rajiv, is that fine? Can we? I think I'm generally. This is what I wanted to speak about because there are no questions. Then I think for the time being, I'll call it a day and probably will follow it up at a much more later session.
Yeah, yes, sir. Actually, that's enough because you shared the what are the things in the area of entrepreneurship, especially in the case of the FOSS entrepreneurship. And dear faculty members, kindly raise your doubts or queries regarding to this one. Now, sir is ready to answer. Yes, Radish, sir.
Yes, sir. I was about to, I was about to ask one thing. Uh, how can we? What are the different initiatives that we can take at college for promoting the entrepreneurship? Since of course there are entrepreneurship cells and all, but still it's inactive, like inactive because of many reasons. But how can we make students enthusiastic? In this in the entrepreneurship point of view, can you suggest some programs that we can conduct at institutions,
Yeah.
or,
No, I
or, or some associations that we can do with um, uh, other organizations?
Sure. Okay. So, like I was just so I think what I was just trying to tell you was, um, uh, see, FOSS is one part of it, which we'll speak about. But then, even entrepreneurship per se is something which has to be it has to be driven from inside. So you can only create a facilitating mechanism, and you can create an environment where students can really come in. And the point here is regarding the FOSS cells. We wanted the FOSS cells to work very closely with the IEDCs for the simple reason that this doesn't go too far off. But then FOSS cells also had a larger role to play. Like I said, the first and foremost is one with ICFOSS, you can start creating a little more deeper awareness creation sessions on the FOSS alternatives. The general philosophies, the alternatives, students are not aware of many of the tools that are available. They're not aware of a lot of options that are available for them to make up products. A lot of them do projects in colleges, right? Or even for your academic purposes also. They all do from scratch and they do some small project. But then if they are asked to pick up for solutions, stitch together a much larger project, document it properly, you should create an instance of a repository in your college itself, and allow or encourage students to create something of their own and then document it properly. They need to get over this inhibition. That's what I have personally seen. There is an inhibition in doing. They all do a bit of functionalities, codes and other things, but then to properly document it and publish it, there is an inhibition. I think that has to be taken at a college level or even at ICFOSS level, where you can get involved with a small part of a larger project that ICFOSS is doing, either in assistive or language or hardware. All those functionalities, they're doing a lot of projects. So one of these areas, your FOSS cell can get involved, and if there are interested students, they can even remotely start contributing to this. And once that happens and they gain a confidence, and that is only when you will really see people trying it out. And unless people try out something, it's going to be very difficult to develop. Entrepreneurship in itself has been struggling because people are not trying anything out. They're not having a new idea. So basically, if you can see, the assistive tech is a huge area where there is so much to be done, and that is where a FOSS can make an impact. And that is where when you are in academia, when there is a philanthropy part of it, there's a philosophy part of it, there's also a commercial business part of it. There is potential. So even if you reduce cost, you just replicate something which is already there, but at a lower cost, then you have created value. Similarly, in all tech areas, there are so much to be done. So the first and foremost program I would say is the awareness creation, but more important then would be getting them connected to a real project and making them really publish what they have done. All of us know that when we write, all of us can write a note and paper, but properly documenting it and publishing it as a paper becomes very difficult. So this is more like that. So you document it properly and publish it, be ready for a peer review, be part of a larger project. All of us need not create everything new. You can be part of a very small part of a larger project. There's so much of opportunities available. I think that is what we may need to work out initially. And once that happens, and you have two or three student volunteers who are very keen, then it will build around that. I think that is right for entrepreneurship and for FOSS also.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that assistive technologies related projects will be doing better, I think. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Any questions?
So, what should be the areas that should we be giving thrust or enough importance? Like, should we be giving importance to enhancing the students with new skills or developing the skills that they already have, or giving them workshops on the newly developed languages like that? So, what do you think we should be giving the students?
I think that would be it has to be all. The best option would be give them all if possible. But then the more serious thing would be if they are good at something. The whole idea which I said is, are they in that particular technology, whichever it is, at least in the FOSS domain, there would be a community which is working on some larger project. Can they volunteer it, or can they be part of it? I think we need to see if that kind of a possibility is there. And now, talking from an entrepreneurship point of view, is there a live problem which they can address? And I think would say that a lot of your students who were there in 2018 are the ones, they may come under various names. They might have come under IEEE, CSI, or many names. But then those are the people who really worked on the rescue.in project when the floods hit us initially. So they had a real life problem, and then they all chipped in with their capabilities, and then they build over it. So your capability or the skill follows what do you call the CSP model. Like it's a comfort, stress, and panic. So all of us in a comfort zone, our skills won't develop. You keep on stretching, then I think your skills will develop. But if you leave it to your comfort zone, then ultimately it ends up in panic, or a panic situation makes you develop much further. So whichever way you want to look at it. So the point is, you have a situation now in Corona. So is there some area where you think your people can work out a project that can be very simple project that can be useful? Work on it. So they should also feel the relevance of the project. Many a times our people don't take a project seriously because they don't see the outcome of the project being relevant in real life situation. So that's where I said, ask them to be a small part in a much larger project which is there in the community or being advertised, or even directly with ICFOSS, they might be doing projects so they can remotely work and access and work the thing. So if that happens, and they will develop their own, they'll find out their own strengths and skills on it, and then they'll also be known across. So that is what I would suggest, because I don't have a specific right wrong answer for this, but then I think expose them to the right problems and potential problems which have an outcome, and that will make them interested in the project. That's what we have seen. Okay, I think yes, yeah. At one point, like I had to go 10 minutes early, so that is why I made it short, and I requested any questions on this. So Rajiv, if there is nothing else, like I may be kindly excuse that I'm available on my email or mobile if there are any particular specific questions.
Yes, okay. Thank you, sir. Then, any other questions?
Fine then. I think let's thank you all for patient listening and for your questions, and wish you all the best. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Your wonderful talk about the entrepreneurship and what exactly how the FOSS is helping the upcoming entrepreneurs in the area of FOSS.
Thank you.
Okay, okay, thank you, sir. Then we will present a small virtual memento to you, sir.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Rajiv. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Our next segment is the panel discussion on the theme myths and challenges in FOSS. And it will be started by 11 o'clock.
Hi, good morning, all. So, how are you doing today?
Yeah, hi Kailas. Yes, fine.
Hi, sir. So, what about the others? Reshma ma'am, Naveena ma'am. ലോഗൗട്ട് ആവുന്നുണ്ട്, എവിടെയും പോകരുത്. 11 മണിക്ക് അടുത്ത ഡിസ്കഷൻ തുടങ്ങും. അപ്പോൾ ആക്റ്റീവായിട്ട് എല്ലാവരും ഉണ്ടാവണം. I think Brucer is not joined today. Okay.
ആശിഷിന്റെ ഫുൾ നെയിം അറിയാമോ?
Read. Hi, Vishal. Hi. വിശാൽ, അപ്പോൾ ഡിസ്കഷൻ തുടങ്ങുന്നത് 11 മണിക്കാണ്. ഓക്കെ.
Hello. Hello, Kailas. Hello.
Sir, good morning, sir.
Good
Kailas here.
morning. Good morning, Kailas. Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, it's audible.
Okay. Just for testing, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sir, actually, hi all. I think our panel members Vishal and Srini sir is here, and other members are also expected to join soon. So our discussion will start within the next 3-4 minutes. Please stay tuned.
Welcome back, everyone. Our next segment is the panel discussion on the myths and challenges in FOSS. The ultimate goal of this discussion is to address the challenges and concerns in propagation of FOSS in each college. Your challenges and concerns will be discussed in the panel, and the last 30 minutes of the session is scheduled for direct interaction, and all our concerns will be addressed by the panel members. Now I welcome Mr. Nagarjuna Ji, who works in the Homi Bhabha Center for Science Education, Tata Institute of Fundamental Research in Mumbai, India. His major research interests include science education, cognitive science, history and philosophy of science, and structure and dynamics of knowledge. He focuses on promoting free knowledge and free software and serves as the chairperson of Free Software Foundation of India. I invite him for the inauguration and moderation of the panel discussion. I also welcome all other panel members, Professor Elizabeth Shirley, IC4S, Mr. Arun M. KSITM, Mr. Anivar A. Arun, SMC, Mr. Srinivasan R. IC4S, Mr. Ashish Abraham Joseph, CFC, and Vishal B. Kela, Startup Mission, to start with this discussion.
Okay, so I think Nagarjuna is trying to join, and also it will be good if the panel members are turning on their cameras. So
Yeah, I have joined already.
okay, thank you, sir. So we have the panel members, Professor Elizabeth Redley, Director IC4S, Srinivasan R IC4S, and also Arunam KSITM, Anivar MC, CFC Air Force based startup, and also Vishal B KSUM, and also Samuel, one of our incubator startup founder, is also expected to join soon. So I think we can start the session, sir. So it's all out to you, Nagarjuna, sir.
Yeah, very good morning, all of you. And we are actually having this discussion at a time when the nation is fighting against COVID. And it's very difficult to take our attention from the current pandemic. But this also gives us enormous amount of opportunities to rethink and look at why is the society not as responsive and as creative in dealing with such situations. It also reflects a lot about the quality and the kind of higher education that our institutes, the schools, colleges, and universities have actually managed to put together. Considering the kind of situations, there are excellent opportunities for us to reimagine higher education. And in this process, one of the very important dimension that is within our hands in higher education, and that is to create citizens who are creative, who are capable of not just consuming content and delivering content, but we should be in a position to make and maintain the various devices that help us in handling situations of this kind, because as all of you know that science and technology is at the heart, but science and technology is always made by creative people. So in one hand, the higher educations higher education institutes all across the world, actually not only in India, have somehow focused a lot on delivering content, making and producing a lot of graduates who essentially graduate by consuming how good the students are in consumption, because we are only testing how good they are in consumption of knowledge rather than how good they are in producing knowledge. And I think that is, in one sense, the free and open source software model tries to address in a very foundational way. And this is, I think, one of the most important lessons that I have learned while being a part of the free and open source software, as well as being part of higher education system. As a faculty at Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, particularly also working in the area of trying to solve the problems in science education and technology education, which has been my area of expertise. This is what I learned most. And my perception is that we are focusing most of our quality time inside the colleges and institutes in delivery of lessons, and also encouraging the students to consume what we deliver. I think this must change. We can't manage to change this culture. We can't save and create citizens who can actually help themselves, not only in situations like this, but even otherwise in their life. There are so many important facts that we can understand by just looking at the reality check. For example, if you look at where is India in the global scenario, you would see very clearly, for example, if you take the statistics of where we are in terms of internet usage, we are on the top of the world. US, India, and China are on the top of the world in terms of internet usage. But there is a major difference. We cannot celebrate for one reason why we are along with India, US, and China. The reason being that US and China are not only consumers, but they're also producers of both technology as well as knowledge. Whereas India remains on the top of the world only as a consumer of IT resources, both hardware and software. But we're not been a major producer of science and technology. I think that we have to understand. We cannot celebrate ourselves by being on the top consumer, but we have to be on the top as a producer in the STEM education space or research space. And that brings us to certain important questions, because all of you know that FOSS is an important agenda item. For all these days, you have been discussing this. And in today's discussion, we are going to particularly try to address the challenges. I want to share my experiences of how I have tried to address this issue of many of the faculty challenges that many of you have been facing. So may I request you to give me a presentation, right, so that I have no all of you.
Sure, sir. Sure.
Thank you. So this is one of the most important challenges that all of us face. I hope all of you can see the screen. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, so this is one of the often asked question by all of us, is that there is no explicit mention of FOSS in the syllabus. So what do we do? So in general, this is what I do. What I do is I, instead of focusing on the content, which I try to push it to the background, and then bring in the culture to the foreground. And also the other thing that I do is to focus on the skills instead of specific content. So this sort of always helps enormously. Whatever be the technology that you speak about, when we focus on the skills part, that is a very universal kind of description of the kind of things that we need to learn in the schools and colleges. Suddenly you will see that the opportunities that we have in tackling this problem becomes tangible. And the other aspect, of course, is that there is not sufficient talent within the in the faculty. The awareness in the faculty as well as in the students is less. And I mean, this is something that is, of course, true. It's a matter of fact. And the only way how we can enhance this awareness is when we begin to tinker and converse about it in a peer group. So what we have done mostly is, we have encouraged a large number of groups formed within the colleges and universities, create a collaborative space, create a club, and it is in that club that we make sure that a lot of conversation happens. And in fact, the kind of learning that happens mostly in the FOSS happens in a peer-to-peer manner. I'll speak about peer-to-peer aspect a little later, but I must tell you that the transmission of awareness, particularly about FOSS, happens more horizontally than as a vertical model. That means it doesn't happen from teacher to students, but it happens among students. I think this is one of the most important things that we have to realize. Let us accept with honesty that we are not as good as students when it comes to learning new technologies, learning new things. So we should be very happy to pass on and be vigilant about the horizontal knowledge that happens inside the classroom, while the students are given small challenges, and when those people are talking among them, that is when the awareness increases. And it happens mostly through participating in conversations and joining in online forums, etc., which essentially means that we have to look outside our school and college environment as a space of learning. So this is the previous point is also connected to this important point, that we often find that there is not enough resources, there are no experts inside the college. What do we do? But actually speaking, the reason for why we don't find experts in the college is because we are not only looking inside the school and college. So we have to look outside our walls. We have to make our classrooms porous, our colleges also porous, in the sense that we should be in a position to invite experts from outside the academia. Call people from industry, call people from the various project groups all across the world. In fact, this is something that I find very interesting, because when I invited somebody from Germany, somebody from France, and somebody from US to be part of the class, suddenly there is enormous amount of interest among the students. this is an excellent opportunity for us. Instead of we being the teachers, you call a project head who is handling, let us say, who has been contributing to Mozilla, who has been contributing to uh, another project. Some of these projects they already know. So what you can do is, you get in touch with the people who are actually managing several of these projects and identify someone who is very friendly among them to talk to your students, and that sort of gives them a kind of an identity. In one way, you are also encouraging them to be part of our academies, but in another way, you are also exposing your students to the outside world. And I think this is a very important step. It worked very well for me while encouraging my students. And many of them meet a number of experts on GitLab and GitHub, and also in other resources, other places. So this also helps to solve the other problem that we also find, because sometimes we say that we don't have sufficient internship opportunities. So normally when you look for internships, you always look for internship opportunities only in the industries and companies around you. And also sometimes we find internships within universities or colleges. But if you actually start looking outside our universities and industries around you, you will actually see that there are a large number of projects, there are a lot of issues, a lot of bugs that have been reported on many of the famous projects that we all know. And what you could do is, you could go and ask the students to be part of those issues, those bugs. So why don't you go and fix those bugs and become part of their development? For example, I am using this presentation using cryptpad.fr, and this project also has a lot of bugs. Not, of course, they're not visible in the deployed part, but if you actually start working with the beta or alpha branches of this, you will find a lot of issues that have been reported on their project management site. And it will be wonderful if students actually can talk to those developers and try to fix those problems, and that itself can be an excellent internship opportunities. Some of these projects may not be actually giving you a certificate, but then your contributions are in the Git repository, and that itself is a better certificate. So we need to begin to learn how these new forms of certification are also as important as some kind of a paper that we give in recognition of somebody being an intern. So this is also something that worked very well for me. I also take interns, but at the same time, my students also take internship outside the boundaries, not only within my institute, but also across the boundaries of the country. And in fact, we find a lot of helping people outside in many of the projects across the world. And associated to this is also another important thing, which is peer-to-peer culture. In fact, most of our academies are structured in a very hierarchical way. We don't want our students to talk all the time. In fact, we give them very less opportunities. In fact, we try to finish all the syllabus ourselves as faculty. But my experience has been a little different. I may spend about 50% of the time available to me in my classes. What I normally do is to give the remaining 50% of the time to the students. And students are encouraged to do projects, and then when they are doing those projects, they'll be making presentations. And I can tell you, even the attendance of all the students in the class is always 100%, because students wants to listen to students. They really get bored to always listen to us. And if we start hearing them, you will see that they're so much motivated and their knowledge skills are so interesting that they actually go and do research outside the textbooks. They go all over the world and look for resources to find answers to their problems. And they come back and start talking. And because a student is making a presentation, the other students will ask a lot of questions. You may always find that, and I always found it in my own experience, that when I give a talk, I get less questions. When a student gives a talk, there is a lot of conversation in the classroom. And I think this is how we can begin to break the barriers that we have and create this kind of a peer-to-peer culture. It will take time. This kind of restructuring will take time because we are also learning ourselves in this process, because most of the time we always think that we are responsible for the entire knowledge transfer, but we always do not see how interestingly knowledge actually gets transferred from one to the other. So this is also one of the important uh, things that I always try to make sure that this happens. And one nice way that you can do this is by asking the students not to call you sir or madam. For example, all my students call me GN, just as many of the other of my colleagues also call me GN. And I always discourage them to call me a Professor Nagarjuna or sir or something like that, because that always maintains that distance, and they get used to it very soon. They'll start calling you by your initials or your first name or whatever. That itself will be a big cultural change, and this is exactly what you see in many of the FOSS platforms, that many people are addressed by their initials, and oftentimes we do not even know the person's real name, but people don't mind, because what they mind is the actual point where we are talking and conversing. They actually don't mind whether you are a 70-year-old person or a 16-year-old person. It doesn't matter. Oftentimes a 16-year-old adverts can actually become the gurus of very old people. And this is an important cultural transmission, cultural transformation that we have to accept. And this is something that is very, very important. And this small cultural change can actually save a lot of things, because we are not harnessing the amount of energy that the students have in the learning space. And so I really think that this is one of the largest take-home points for me when I started working in FOSS communities. It may appear to be not very important, but it's a very important point. And so before I move on to other things, I invite other panelists. I just wanted to share what our lab has been doing for the last 1 year or so during the pandemic. So we created this platform called metastudio.org, where we invited engineering students and science students, etc., to do projects. And we have created home labs for doing science and maker spaces for doing engineering projects. Just to show you, just as an example, like what are the kind of projects that we did to make them, to engage them while they are at home studying the things. So we have regular meetings for them to join at a prescribed time. In fact, every day we used to have them, or only recently we converted them into Wednesday meetings. So every Wednesday we meet to discuss the makerspace. And for science, we meet them actually regularly, because we have a large number of science students. So we meet them every day from 5:30 to 8:30. Without any specific agenda. We just basically, the only agenda is that all the home labs, whatever they're doing, they'll be coming and talking about it. For example, we created a micro weather station, and several engineering students have actually come and created an Internet of Things like a micro weather station. It's a an IoT project. So people are doing both software, hardware, design, and mechanical, and so many other things are part of this entire business. So it's a collaborative effort to create these things. So they write about their projects, they do them here. And similarly, we have also done a lot of small projects even for children. For example, we encourage them to make their own microscopes, or telescopes and things like that. So people have used how to convert and create a webcam, and converting a webcam into a microscope and things like that. So why am I telling you about this is because this actually sort of encourages them to do tinkering while they are at home. The reason why I'm specifically talking about these projects and not about software projects is because you have been hearing about software projects all the time. And I also wanted to specifically mention that, we also need a lot of hardware tinkering as a part of this FOSS communities, because we also have to make sure that we develop our abilities in managing, repairing our hardware as well. So this is one reason, and of course all of you know that all the hardware that we use is imported, and India has no ability to manage if there is any kind of an embargo of or whatever kind. We will be having not only oxygen supply problems, we'll also be having hardware supply problems if situation actually deteriorates, because we will not be in a position to manage and maintain our own resources within the country. And that therefore requires that we have to create students who are capable of managing all kinds of aspects. So these resources do not include only software, but also the hardware and mechanical engineering projects and robotics and various other kinds of projects that we need to think about. And students are very happy to do them. And so that's a very important thing that let's keep those things in mind. And the last point I wanted to say before I conclude is that let's focus more on projects, make a project-based education in higher education, and do less of textbook-based or topic-based education, particularly in technology-based space. So I will conclude my opening remarks and sharing my experiences and the way how I deal with the kind of problems in transforming the and restructuring the higher education space. So I do not know exactly in what order I should invite the panelists. Maybe can I request someone from FOSS to help me the order in which you want the panelists to speak? Is that okay? By the way, did Arun and Anivar and Srinivasan and Ashish and Vishal, did they all join?
Hello, yes, we are here.
Yeah, hi Anivar.
Hi, I'm here.
Hi, Srini here.
Hi Srini. Anivar, what about Arun? Arun has come. Vishal.
Yes, sir, Vishal.
Hi Vishal.
Hi.
What about Ashish?
Hi sir, Ashish here. Pardon the video, it's not working properly.
Doesn't matter, yeah. As long as you are there and you are able to hear us, and you are able to speak, that is very important. Yeah, so
Sure, sir.
uh, so let's begin the conversation. I hope Arun will be going to join very soon. Is there any message from Arun?
I think he'll be joining in the next 30 minutes.
Okay, fine. Okay, so then we can start the conversation. So,
Also, I'm interrupting again. Samuel is also here. That knows founder of the startup.
okay, yeah,
I think
please let's invite Samuel John also into the panel. So, I will, maybe request each of you to begin the conversation, and maybe we can go in whichever order you like. I haven't really thought about it. I apologize for that. But maybe we can start with Samuel. Samuel, are you okay to begin the conversation and share your experiences and your suggestions to the faculty? By the way, we also have a faculty, right, with us. Uh,
Sir, I think it's better to start with Shirley ma'am. So she has
okay,
to.
okay, okay. I'll follow your suggestion. Yes, Professor Elizabeth Shirley, why don't you initiate the conversation? Yes.
Yeah, very good morning to all of you. And thank you very much, Nagarjuna sir, for a very pretty and very good starting presentation. And of course, your experience in the higher education have been drawn very carefully. Myself being, uh, I can be in both sides, the government side as well as in the higher education side. And also now, heading a organization where the ICFOS activities have been taking place. So there may be a lot of experiences I can share it, but I don't take too much time on that. I'll just start with some conversation, and I will rest of things I'll give to you because there are a number of other speakers, so they can also give contribution to this. See, as I see this, open source have been in use quite for a long time, and even India had become more popular as everybody know that the evangelism of even Richard Stallman. Even after Richard Stallman's visit at this different talks and events, even I came to know, or I have seen the potential, or what even I came to know what is open source software, etc. But the problem, what I have seen it is that this has been painted by our own society, and it has been gone into a different way of thinking and all. Whether it can be because of the industrial pressure, or even from the public sector, or a commerce, or even in the government also. But for anyone who develops software professionally, all this open source hype, no doubt seems that's pretty far-fetched in the beginning. But this may be because of some of the myths it is surfaced on the open source software, because that's why the topic is also myth and the challenges. It is a very apt topic because when we say about myth, what is myth? So, it is something, it is an old, so once upon a time story, or something it is not untrue. But we believe that and we practice it. That is a societal impact it comes to us. But there is no scientific evidence in that, and this carry on without having uncovering this truth. That is what happened in IC, even this FOSS software also. But we can see a lot of potential, and we can see many things we can do with the FOSS software, and how we can compete with the proprietary software also. Earlier also, how the open source software have been started, it open source development is done by some amateurs or by student it as a hobby, but that's a wrong practice. And but we live in a scientific drive and the technology driven world. So as per the market or the good practices, we need a paradigm shift. So that's Kerala government. It has started with a an organization like Free Software, International Free Software and Free Software Solutions. So I mean, you cannot see all this in the other states also. Earlier, they did talk, if you see that government also, when I think a decade before, it was even a decision by the government of Kerala that the open source software has to be promoted. Uh, that is a very good initiative that the government has taken, but still it took a lot of time to digest it, even from the public also, and the other things, and also proprietary software also come into play. So I'm not against proprietary software, but at this I'm saying that because but now if you look at that, and also as an organization, I suppose an organization, it had a lot of struggle, because what they do, what they contribute, if they develop something, where do they contribute? The people, the trust has to come. The open software can do an end-to-end system, it can develop products, it can give services, etc. That kind of trust had not come at the beginning, when even the government of Kerala has also taken up to promote Kerala, even ISIS, even the free software. But gradually, I can see that has changed it. And even in now FOSS, there are a number of government projects as well as other allied government projects. FOSS is successfully doing it and delivering it. This is a very promising trend. We have seen it now, and many of the people, they are asking, okay, whether you can develop it. That it is not because of the post, or it is not because of the other kind of, it's because people have accepted. There is an acceptance come from the people that open software can also contribute, just like us, and whatever it is compete with the market, it is possible. So even if you take even coming to the companies, even the top-notch companies also, even because of the group propagation that happened in the open source, so the companies, it has also become a threat. And what they have done it, they have also moved into open source initiatives. Even Microsoft is also having an open source initiative. If you look at many of the top-notch companies also, because otherwise it's a survival question for them. So this is something, it has been come as a myth in some of the things, but I think slowly that myth is changing, and we people have to change it. And what are the remedies we can take it on that? And this is where the challenge, when we take it, what are the challenges we have? Challenges in many ways, but mostly I just concentrated into a few challenges where we come to the FOSS software. One main challenges what people have again have a concern is about the security, because as you know that data protection, so and whether my data is protected. And even for the free software, the code is distributed freely. So what is the protection for my code? So these are some of the very genuine questions when you deal with the security part of that. But one thing is that something is open, then there is no question of stealing. So there is no theft in that. So we are, I mean, the open source software are open, so anybody can see. And so once you see it, what we feel it, okay, you can contribute something more into that and to make it more pakka. So that's the way it become more secure. So there is not much question of a security when it comes to the open source software. And there are a lot of security measures that can also be taken it when we consider the data part, as well as for the code generations and the distribution of the code, etc. Another big question is that the legal part of that. Most of you know that, because open source software, the legal licensing and the copyright, this all are the nightmare for them. So can we protect it? Because once we say that it is open, it is public, it is free, and at the same time we say that we need protection. So this is something, a dilemma we have facing it now. But open source utilizes variety of licenses, so open licenses also we have. It can be available to the project as a public, or can employ some legal protection and the copyright also, patents also into that. So that can be applied into that. Then another thing is that the scalability, because scalability is because as earlier as a myth it comes that okay, it is developed by the students or it is developed by a small community, and just for a single user or a minimum number of users it has been developed. But this is not possible when you really go into deployment. So what about the scalability part of that? So, but now you know that it is not a mention. What happened to Apache? What happened to WordPress, or what happened to many of such kind of big software? It has been developed in open source, and now if we deploy it in the cloud, also we have open cloud software culture there, and many of the hypervisors are also available in open software. So scalability is also solving it in a big way when we using this open source software. So this is something, I mean, many other issues are there, and the challenges we have there, because the thing is that whether we can develop an end-to-end system, or how the maintenance, testing, and who will support the support for that, because basically some community will do and just post it in the GitHub or somewhere else, and but who will support it, who will honor it? So being an, that's what the organization structure is required for that. Being an organization like FOSS, we can own it, and we can also have the responsibility for that. But when we go for a piece by piece work by a community level, so that kind of challenges we have, and we need to have a structure and a framework to how to go ahead with the project management and the product development kind of thing. So that is normally we don't see it in the free software movements, but this should be in place. And second thing is that, but I thought that I'd focus on into the something I can talk about the higher education sector. But what are the points I have even just come into my mind, whether like as a syllabus or an internship or a faculty students interaction clubs, etc. But thanks to Dr. Nagar, this is what you have introduced it in a very productive manner, and how the FOSS culture can be developed in an education institution, what practices you have been doing it in your Tata Institute. So, so that is clearly been pointed out, so that the same can be adopted to any organization, any education institutions, etc. So I am not talking too much about that, because you are the pioneer and you have already been done on that. So, and the thing is that the education institution also, the FOSS activities, not only in education institution where it has to become it as in the mainstream, and that to promote academic and the research community, and create certain professional bodies also. I think Nagarjuna sir also mentioned about that, like we have IEEE and ACM or CSI in the school colleges. Likewise, even FOSS is promoting a lot into the educational sector through FOSS Cell. Even this program is also a FOSS Cell activities, and starting FOSS Cell activities in the colleges and also. But thing is that we also have a limited resources in that, and we cannot find larger number of experts or resources that can do in that. So that is a limitation we have. So, but only a limited number of people, even people are really interested to go with this free software. So we need to have more people to work in with this and evangelize the free software kind of, and to create a culture of software, free software. And when I say, and I am not think that the free as a software we need to promote, but as a low cost or as something without going into much from the market, we can develop something, and this will benefit to a larger society, in the sense those who really cannot afford the other software. I mean, what I can really point out is that even if I take FOSS, some of the thrust areas we have concentrated. One is language technology, the other one is open software, and third one what we do is in assistive technology. So I give a lot of importance to assistive technology because this is where people are really in need for the technology and the technology products or something they want to live as others live. So their barriers to live just like an others, that has to be broken. And there the technology has to be provided where free software can do a lot on that without having any other kind of things. And a lot of products is coming, a lot of devices is coming, and software can also support into that. So that's what ICFOSS also look into our the assistive technology developments in a massive scale in asset trust area. So that community or that particular minor community, they really want it, and that not only for their livelihood but for their education also, for small children, early learning, what we can do it with that. So this is something our society should have it in mind and should promote it and do something on that. That is the crux of this, and we feel more satisfaction in doing such kind of work rather than doing anything else. So there are a lot of scope even in that kind and even in the education sector. And so I was also mentioning about the content development and all. And we need to talk to them, as Sarah has mentioned it, we need to talk to the students more than what we talk, because their need we need to understand and what they can do without going into high-fi kind of things. So if we can give something on that, that is something which is more important. That's what I thought, that even with the assistive technologies also, we need to find out their need and what FOSS can contribute into them. So that is where we need to concentrate more on that. And challenges are many, but I think we need to break that. Now we can do it because the potential of free software, its products, its scalability, its security, and all we have witnessed now, and we will definitely go ahead with that. So with this words, I'll stop here, and I will my others can take over into these conversations. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Shalini ma'am, for covering most of the myths as well as the challenges. I mean, thankfully, many of the myths are dissolving slowly. In the last, we have seen that there was a time when we used to use the term that people created FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt about free software. But we don't talk about that as much as we used to do in the past, for the very simple reason that most of them people have realized are actually myths. And so what we have before us is more challenges than myths, actually speaking, because myths are slowly dissolving in front of us. And yeah, so maybe should I just invite then Srini? Are you ready to initiate conversation, Srini?
I suggest that others like Anivar and others I can take later on, because my points will be mostly from IC4 side. Let us try to hear from the other side as well.
Okay, all right. I respect
Anivar
that. So yes, Arun is not around. So why don't you start with Anivar then? And we'll wait. So Anivar.
Hi everyone. Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, I can hear you. We can hear you. Yes.
Thank you for inviting me. So I just received the questions yesterday from some of the concerns raised by the faculty members yesterday. And I already seen that Nagarjuna sir covered many of that already. And Shirley ma'am shared some of the high-level concerns around FOSS and its scalability and everything. And she covered many of the myths. But I'm talking a bit specific to the community part. So this is, and this is, since it is a faculty development program, and as a person closely watching IC4s, this is I'm going to be a bit critical, and since it is an internal program. Okay, so the IC4s initially had good so I think IC4s need to define itself as how you engage with upstream projects, because there was a way of engagement historically on IC4s, but that got lost somewhere in the middle, maybe in last 3-4 years. In a specific time in which you focused more on the research part, but at the same time you haven't defined how that research will contribute back to FOSS. So there is a lot of staff in IC4s, but at the same time, how you contribute back to FOSS is somewhere you need to focus a bit more, I think. So as of now, around if you look at even IC4s activities, how you engage with the upstream communities is now mostly, I think, maybe a 10% or maybe close to nil. So this is where you will find expertise. One of the points raised in the note is how to find expertise. Finding expertise is easy within free software. Engage with the upstream communities. Instead of building everything in-house, you need to contribute back to the upstream communities. Let it be Malayalam. My SMC is an upstream community in Malayalam computing. Similarly, you can find many upstream communities which will build and develop software around free software. And expertise is available in many of these communities, and contribution, the association options are much easier nowadays. Second, even though IC4S has FOSS cells, that FOSS cells is not helping communities in Kerala to organize programs locally. This is one of the critics, I think, almost like I think 2019 November, there was a community meeting organized in IC4S. At that time, this critique was raised by some of the community members, as I seen in the discussions. But after that, there is no, so basically the communities usually have two issues. One, the practical grassroots organizing and the connection with communities is not available for all the FOSS communities. But at the same time, IC4S can be the connecting force between the communities to organize activities locally, as well as the connecting the expertise available in the FOSS communities with local development. The FOSS cells, because which is you already have a program of FOSS cells and connection with the students. So if the institution can interconnect these two, you already will get the expertise. You already can do the grassroots activities. That's a common ground you can explore. Similarly, another force happening around the free, there are mentions about IT at school and similar kind of it says that IT at school has a revolutionary step from the government in promoting FOSS. So let's look at the government. So I as a person spent so much time in last 15 years in increasing the FOSS capacities in Kerala. What I observed is in 2005 to 2010 time, it was more a time of building an ecosystem of free software in Kerala, which includes IT at school, which includes Wikimedia communities, which include Malayalam computing related stuff, and there was a lot of collaboration between everyone. So, but at the same time, and also this time there are people like Arun and Joseph and many of our friends invested time in investing capacities within the government on free software. Many volunteers contributed to the transfer of the capacities within maybe like Kerala Legislative Assembly turning slowly into free software, and all those things are done. But later what happened after IC4's time, there was many of us invested time in building capacities within the government through IC4s, but at the same time, if you look at in 2020, the capacities is totally lost. There is no FOSS usage within the government. Everyone went back to Microsoft systems. The purchases went back to Microsoft system in last 6-7 years. The technology, the IT mission became something like a implementation agency of national e-governance programs. ICT Academy is basically not just another skill education program, but at the same time, there is no FOSS content in it. Even though we have KTU engagement with KTU and everything is not happening much, there is no FOSS curriculum happening much. So I think there is a total vacuum happened in last 10 years of ICFOS in Kerala. This is where a government institution can do quite a lot, especially by bringing the expertise in community as well as building your own capacities for training and enhancing. But at the same time, what we are seeing right now is a total reverse trend in everything. And similarly, if you look at uh, the new trend around skills and skill education, and the syllabus around it. It's going mostly into non-force areas because nobody there offering force-based solutions much. So the whole K-DISC program in planning in Kerala, I can't see much force in any of their reference discussions. So as an institution, I suggest and I request IC4 to engage in these things and make sure that force is an essential part of ongoing discussions around skill education. Otherwise, we are losing the ground. So it's and when we talk about digital infrastructure, historically Kerala had its own digital infrastructure. In 2015, if you look at all e-governance projects, almost 95% was running on free FOSS platforms. While we are moving right now, it's not. The whole local capacity around FOSS is lost. State is primarily depending upon NIC for its solution delivery, but at the same time, decision capacity around FOSS is gone. So this is a pessimistic scenario in India, especially in Kerala. There is a lot of stories about FOSS in Kerala, histories around FOSS in Kerala, but at the same time, as of now, we are going in a reverse trend. And that reverse trend, the only possibility for reversing it is the only last institution available within the government to reverse it is ICFOSS. And if ICFOSS can take that role and the ICFOSS staff can take a role on that, it can reverse it into a major way, especially on defining digital infrastructure and ensuring FOSS role in it. Be engaged in more becoming an institution which can do more public interest plus government capacities building without being just an implementation agency of some of the national projects. For example, even though state is saying that state is using force, but using force is not enough, right? There is nothing coming out of it mostly. So using some of the open source libraries is common around all the industry. But at the same time, do we create force industries? Do we create force jobs? Do we create more career options around force? So all these are also important. So Malayalam computing right now become something like in last 10 years, it become the first interface of inclusion, right? So there is a lot of technology development happening, but at the same time, we need to make it more career oriented. There is a lot of skills, but building career around it is still pending. Even though there is even platforms and companies are very using this development in Malayalam computing in a quite active manner. The user base is increased. So I think there is a baseline of ICFOS need to plan how it need to fit on the current scenario than doing some activities around force. I think this is my primary criticism. Second, around myth and challenges around force. I think there is also a national tendency around openness right now. Even I think next tomorrow or day after, even Digital India is organizing another program, and I think FAST ICFOS director Sadish Babu Sar is also part of the panel. So there is a lot of discussion around digital ecosystems and all those kind of stuff. But at the same time, building a force implementation. There is an open API implementation discussions happening in a national way, but open API is not really force. There is a force way of implementing the digital ecosystems, standing up for federal rights on digital ecosystems, especially since it's a government running center. So this is my baseline of the points. If there is questions, I can explain this a little bit more, because right now we are many of the national discussions is around building proprietary services around some proprietary core services and call it as openness. This is the Open API kind of development. But Open API is not free software. As a center like International Center for Free and Open Source Software, it can actually drive a mission of building technologies which is actually free and open source and ensure the software freedom on that. And just like the Kerala model on health, Kerala model on free software can be expanded. So this is my suggestions. If any question is there, I can expand these points.
Yeah, thank you, Anivar, for raising a large number of issues. In fact, some of the issues that you have raised actually are also illustrations of the challenges, because the responses that come for making sure that in the name of openness, a lot of what we call open washing is happening, both in the government circles. And I think there is one important take-home point from what you said is that in the upcoming meeting with the of the Ministry of Technology, which organized the upcoming conference, it is very important to underline this message as a part of the IC/FOSS representation. And that's very important because there is hardly any emphasis of it actually echoes one of the points that I made. India is a consumer. Now, don't make India as the largest consumer of FOSS. In fact, if you look at the many of the central government e-government initiatives, they're all using FOSS. So using FOSS is not what I think we need to stop there. We have to produce FOSS in the country, and that point is actually a very important aspect, because a lot of people do not think that producing and being part of the production process and sharing the source code of all the major infrastructure projects that India has developed is as important. And if you haven't done that, then you're actually not into the FOSS ecosystem in any sense. And I think that's a very important point. And there are many other criticisms that you have also mentioned about some shift in the IC/FOSS, possibly that can be discussed separately while we address some of the concerns the faculty who is struggling to take FOSS into the mainstream education and higher education particularly. And as you also mentioned, I think the point is very welcome that experts are all over the place, and I think we need to look at the upstream developers, and that is where we find the experts. I think that's also an important point, which is also echoed in my presentation. Okay, so
Sir, I have one point to add.
yeah, please, Shali. Yes.
Thank you, Anivar, for your talk and point out some of the issues and suggestions for that. But as Nagarjuna sir pointed out, FOSS usage is not the one we need to concentrate. We need to go to the next level where we need to produce something. So when you go for a produce, even the infrastructure level or the service level, we need to look at it in a big umbrella where maybe in the umbrella of FOSS, we need to do so many other activities also. So by merely setting up Ubuntu or replacing Windows or any other proprietary software is not the agenda for the IC/FOSS. So that period is over. Earlier, as we have mentioned it, even Arun and they have done a lot of initiatives to set up that in the government sector also. So that is we have already done. But changing and all, it comes depending on the government's the changes and all. But now we have to go to the next level. We need to develop something on the top of that, where the development will come. We need to give services to them. So that's the way we need to look at the IC4 Act also. So expertise building and usage and all, of course, what Anwar has suggested we look into, and we will include those in the FOSS activities also. So this is something I wanted to add it into this. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So where shall we go now? So should we request Vishal?
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yes.
So very good morning to all. So I represent organization Kerala Startup Mission. So we support startups actually, and we have a good implementation of schemes in colleges named Innovation Entrepreneurship Development Center, and it was started in the year 2015, and we have been able to devise or set up the AEDC centers in 281 colleges, including engineering colleges, arts and science colleges, and other technology colleges also. So the point is like that. Here we emphasize the college to talk about innovation, entrepreneurship, and other aspects, so that more students can get the opportunity to start something in this sector. Along with this, we partner with a lot of institutions, and we have been set up at one of the FOSS incubator with support of IC4S, and IC4S is driving the FOSS incubators facility. And our aim is to support startups who are coming up with FOSS technology or assistive technology, so that they can get the facility to develop their product. As Elizabeth Madam rightly pointed out, some products should be developed from in-house or from the state itself, so that more students or FOSS thing. I'm to be frank, like I'm not into the FOSS thing actually, but some of the journals of some of the research I have seen that lot of best products, like most of the best companies have created the product with support of open source technology itself. So recently, like I think last 2 months, I have read an article written by Kailash Nath, who is a CTO of Serodha. So right now, after this pandemic situation, a lot of people are entered into this share market and this thing. And one day, suddenly, lot of applications failed down. But the Serodha was not failed. And the CTO, like rightly mentioned, that it was built with the support of open source technology. It's like I have read somewhere. That's why I'm telling, like. So talking about the importance of the open source things, lot of best products, like even though like we are using the social media platforms or other things, these companies have created the product with support of this open source technologies. So the thing is like that, IC4S is pushing lot of colleges or other community to come up with an ideas to create products with support of open source. And here we as a state nodal agency to support startup, we are here to support startup. And the point is like that, moreover we are focusing into entrepreneurship. We are ready to support all kind of open source activity or any activities in the state. And we have a good implementation of this IEDC centers. And this IEDC center will be a channel where you can also create and FOSS cells, or you can send informations or messages to this community, these much facilities are available, or you can create an open source community with the support of this IEDCs also. So these are the points which I am telling, like I want to mention this thing. And adding to this point, like I have heard, like in till 12 class to 12th standard, if you are a government student, you are using the open source technology. And after 12th, they are moving into other higher education, like they are going to engineering or other education. There they are forced to use the this proprietary softwares. So as Anivar also mentioned, like there was an geo where every government institutions are forced to buy this free and open source, or they have to implement this open source technology. Right now the importance is very less, but if government or any other policy is coming up, they can also come back to this track, and most of the colleges can use the open source technology. So when there is an ecosystem, most of the people will be using this thing. If there is not an ecosystem of this open source technology, they are not getting the opportunity to use this thing. And also this educational system, I have seen, like I have been interacting with a lot of academic institutions. I have seen government colleges are only promoting this open source, and in this private colleges, very few colleges are promoting the open source thing. So if there is a change in this level, you can see a lot of wonders in this sector. So that's it, my point. Like if there is any question regarding this, I can answer, and that is over to us.
So can you specifically address in terms of if there is any support for the faculty that your organization can provide?
Support in the sense, sir, what do you mean, sir? Like,
I mean, as a organization promoting innovation and startup.
Okay.
So do you have any specific suggestions about?
Sir, we have been connected with a lot of faculties. In this group also, I have seen like similar faces are there. We regularly organize faculty development programs, and we also give the financial assistance support to organize programs in the specific sectors. Like if they are interested to create an open source community, they can use the fund, and they can organize a lot of programs also. In-house program also, and with the support of other resource person or an expert.
Okay. Do you incubate any development projects?
Sir, we have incubation center in Trivandrum, Kochi, Calicut, Kasaragod, and Palakkad. Apart from that, we also support incubators who are running the incubation facilities. We have nearly 41 plus incubators in our state, and most of them are specifically they have specific domains. Like one of an incubator is focusing in rural technology. Some incubators are focusing in assistive technologies. Like each incubator have specific domain. So if a startup is coming, if their domain doesn't match our mandate, we will be connecting to the other incubator also.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So should I invite Samuel?
Good morning, good morning, Nagarjan sir. Good morning.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so I'm talking from an entrepreneurial perspective insofar as the FOSS community is concerned, and what are the key challenges and the myths, keeping in with the agenda for the meeting. I would now just like to address the key challenges. I mean, as an entrepreneur, Shirley ma'am has in fact brought out the real issue is, anything FOSS is typically frowned upon unless mandated. So that's a step change and a cultural change that needs to happen, and it is not going to happen overnight. It has to there needs to be a very high level of education that needs to go in, saying that, see, FOSS is reliable, FOSS has support, and FOSS, unlike the privately developed applications, will have much longer support life as opposed to, let's say, a proprietary system where you can scale up and scale down the support, right? So that's one of the things that we have faced always when we go in with the FOSS solution. The second major issue, the challenge that we have, is any private ecosystem development that has cost that is involved is quietly at loggerheads with FOSS, which has a much longer time scale for fruition. So when we are working within certain time levels, for example, there was one project that we collaboratively worked with IC FOSS in Trivandrum, where the timelines were very strict. We could not have a forever development cycle insofar as is concerned. So for us, it has to be in a very structured manner. Yes, it is a research project. Yes, there is a lot of research components that come into it, but we need to have the minimum viable solutions quickly to the market. That is something that's very important. And if we were able to look at it from that perspective, I think that would be excellent. We've had a couple of challenges, which is very business driven. For example, during COVID, I had the chance to look at the work that you have done in Open Meta. The availability of hardware. So when we were trying to build certain components, the availability of the components themselves were a bit of a challenge, and let alone building something. So in fact, the micro weather project that you have done, we have done this at a very large scale, and our key problem was simply the materials were not there. So we need to create a repository of easily accessible material that can be provided. I mean, for IC FOSS is very thankfully given us a list of people that we can approach. If this can be built nationally, in terms of who the suppliers are, what is the equipment that they have, especially when it comes to a hardware perspective, that would be very, very interesting for people like us, because we have a one-stop solution for that. So we now go and buy from Moser, and we buy from all over the place. If all this can be brought into one location as a wiki, that would be very helpful, because one of the key challenges is sourcing the material. From the innovation side, there is a very interesting story that we are working with right now. There is something called Open IMIS. Open IMIS is basically a health care management system that was deployed and developed by the Swiss Technical University for Tanzania. This is a model I think we have to emulate. The emulation that we are talking about is we have our own network of international and national collaborations, and what we need to do is we need to end up creating what we call as the structural approaches to challenges. So you have a very specific challenge. Let that be a solution driven challenge, and then invite the people to address each part of the solution rather than bringing the whole thing, and then drive the program towards figuring that solution out, and then of course taking that into production. That will be very helpful, because just to give you an example, we currently there is I think Startup India has gone down this path of getting the challenges and the solutioning part done. I think from a FOSS perspective also, I think we should do that. So something as simple as Open IMIS, which I was just talking about. It was a very specific problem for which they needed an application, for which they invited people, and then they program managed the entire thing to the development and implementation. That would be a much structured approach, because in the real world, when people go out from the FOSS to, let's say, something else, this is the kind of approach that we have. So the forever development perspective should, we should rethink on that. I mean, this is completely coming from an entrepreneurial side. I mean, I do appreciate that there is a very large research and wiki component to it, but I'm talking from an entrepreneurial side. One of the key things that has been a challenge is definitely the demand aggregation part. Kerala Startup Mission, Mr. Vijay, who is here, has done a great job. I mean, at least from the Kerala perspective, to work with multinodal agencies to create a demand aggregation policy, wherein they themselves aggregate the demand and bring it to the FOSS community for FOSS community to build and deploy solutions for that. On a national level, that would be also very interesting if that demand aggregation is taken up, because the part of the problem is exactly addressing a specific issue with the FOSS type of application. So just to give you an example, there was, if I'm not mistaken, a tender was released, I think about a month and a half back. This was to create an open source geospatial platform for one of the governments in the northeastern states. And that nobody in the FOSS community came to know about it until, we came to know about it like 3 weeks back. If this demand can be aggregated, if this demand can be put together in one place, then it just becomes far more easier for people who are in the FOSS community to come in and then work and collaborate with the other people who are, who can, work on these projects to take things up. So this is from an entrepreneurial side. I'm very happy to take questions because I've been working with ICFOSS for the past 4 years. Our journey has never been smooth. I mean, me and Srini sir, we always used to have our little run-ins insofar as this thing is concerned. But overall, from an entrepreneurial side, sir, FOSS is very attractive. FOSS has done excellent stuff. So, for example, Apache Ambari is the greatest FOSS project that I would, because that's how I started from the Hadoop ecosystem. Ambari came in, and Ambari was a completely, FOSS open source project, and then how that propagated up to now being one of the most important structures when it comes to, or the important infrastructure when it comes to big data. So yeah, this is my perspective, and I thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Samuel. Yeah, you have identified some more additional issues. At least one of them that I took note of is to create collaborative, curating some resources, and also the sources from where we get the challenges and demand aggregation. I think these are some of the take-home points from what you spoke. So should we go to Ashish?
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yes.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me introduce myself and my organization first. I've been working with Keltron and IC4 for the past, and later joined the startup right now called Computing Freedom Collective Private Limited, and we are currently looking forward to work as a part of growing green economy and also to build a sustainable business softwares. And our directors being core members of an NGO called Space Kerala. We are basically working on 3 dimensions, mainly on web developments and GIS applications, and also on design aspect for basically interactive design applications for educational technology or similar kind. And I would say, as the Vishal said from Startup Mission, we are proud to say being a part of the FOSS incubator provided by IC4, and also I think it is supported by the Startup Mission. And being a member for as an incubator for the past 1 year, and we have been awarded with different projects along with the collaboration of IC4 and also from Startup Mission. And I would say, as our testimonial, it's been a great support for our company. And also, I would like to add a point along with the point which Anivar explained. As we say, we should focus on the FOSS development, but one thing which I am thinking of is there should be a demand also in another side. If there is no use of FOSS in one side, then we developing FOSS applications would be of no use. There should be enough awareness for usage of FOSS, and it should not go down, or else the being concentrating on the FOSS development will not be fruitful as much as we expect. There should be enough community where the FOSS usage is still there. Only then the development can be fruitful. And also, one thing to add in the case of concerns raised by faculty members regarding internship opportunities, a startup are planning to start internship program on every month of June each and every year for the passing out students from different colleges based on FOSS. And why we are giving the internship opportunity, basically to develop a FOSS culture rather than giving based on technology. The FOSS being mostly on culture part, we are mainly focusing on the culture within the students, and where they can be aware about what is FOSS and how they can develop their career in FOSS. So these are the points which I would like to speak about. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ashish. The demand and development are a kind of a chicken egg situation, but yeah, your point is taken, and I'm happy to know that you are continuing to do this development work in the Computer Freedom Collective, supported by Space Kerala. And so I think now we have no other option to call Srini, because he didn't choose to speak earlier, though I asked him to speak. So Srini, please. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. 1 second.
Yeah. And meanwhile, we haven't heard from Arun, right? Maybe he's not able to join today.
Yeah, I think so. Arun was in the midst of some meeting at IT Mission, and so that is why he excused at that point of time. But he promised to join at some point in between. Okay, I hope I am audible clearly.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Nagarjuna, for inviting me at the beginning. But I specifically wanted to hear from others, because if I talk at this point of time, I will be talking mostly on the IC4 side of it, taking a little time only in this case. I'm happy that all people have expressed their views about the myths and the challenges going forward in FOSS. I joined for IC4S in 2012 and have been part of IC4S in different capacities so far. Prior to this, I have been working in the industry. I actually inherit a lot of things from the industry side. Where exactly I was using FOSS components like OpenCV and all in the past, when we were delivering solutions based on that. So and much more prior to that, I was an academician. I was teaching at Palakkad Engineering College. So it is something like I have been fortunate to work on all these friends, like teaching, industry, and then applied research organization like IC4 and all. The myths has been put up mainly by our people here. I agree that FOSS as such, let me take it to the academic side. How do we promote FOSS? That is one of the things which have been put forward by the academic people. I agree with Nagarjuna that it has to be through projects alone. Rather than promoting FOSS or other things. Take a question like, if you want to develop a solution for this particular problem faced by the society, or for that matter, anything related to government or the society or for an industry, how fast can you come out with a solution? If the faculty takes that as a challenge, automatically the answer is FOSS. You don't have to reinvent everything. You have the entire tools available in different forms. If you look around, like, you have the software, you have the hardware. And what you need to do is that put everything in place so that ultimately it leads to a solution beneficial for the society. And at the end of it, I request the faculty members to take one more point into aspect, into consideration while promoting FOSS like this. That is the business aspect as well. We have been particularly ICFOSS recently, I am trying to promote this aspect where everything which we try to do, I am primarily looking into the open hardware lab right now, open hardware related, open IoT, open drawn, and assistive technology related hardware support and things like that. So what we are trying to do here is we get ourselves engaged in doing something related to FOSS, then try to build the ecosystem around that and do the capacity building and ensure that startups come out of that. This has been, the whole chain has been promoted here. So here you can find that, like when we started on IoT as a use case, IoT as a use case for open hardware, we found out a lot of gaps there. So we tried to address those gaps. Then we did proof of concepts. Then we promoted industries like that of Samul, who is working on automated weather stations across and things like that. We promoted those startups to make use of the technology so that the business aspect grows. Now Samul or CFC teams, they started with 2 members and now they are moved into 7 to 8 members or 10 members. This is the yardstick with which we are trying to promote FOSS. And I think the same model can be taken up from the college level as such also, where you try to bring out solution providers, and these solution providers can easily get or rapidly get into the market with FOSS solutions. You try to address that and automatically that aspect will come through. So that model, if we can promote within the colleges, I would suggest like every semester, can the students get engaged in one of the FOSS projects? Try to put up hackathons of that sort. Every semester, like some theme, let us say ERP during this time, then open hardware during next semester, like that. Some themes can be identified by each institution and then connect with the community. I agree with Anivar completely on that. You need to connect with that particular community, and we all together can promote FOSS in a different way compared to the myths which we have, or as Nagarjuna pointed out, the myths are slowly dissolving. So we all need to work together, and the FOSS cell coordinators should basically focus on how to put challenges in front of the students so that they get into FOSS as a basic threat for providing the solution. So this model can be much more helpful. And yes, of course, ICFOSS will have a place in that. In the case, I can give you a solid example here. We worked for 1.5 years in IoT on LoRaWAN and things like that. We associated with the global network of IoT, the LoRa Alliance. We are a part of that alliance, and we did near to 10 proof of concept solutions. It is not inside the lab; it is put into the field. Now, based on that, we have promoted 14 educational institutions to take up LoRaWAN, and we have provided the basic infrastructure for them to conduct projects in LoRaWAN. So now we have around 13 to 14 BTech student teams working on IoT, drone, and other things. They come here, work here, something like one or 2 weeks, go back and then try to do it. In fact, some of the teams are here even now. So that is the model which we can all work together. But at the end of it, we need to give a big support for the business activity. everyone has to be an entrepreneurial oriented aspect, whether they go for a industry job or anything, but being an entrepreneurial orientation will help them much more. This is what I would like to convey at this point of time, and I'll be happy to contribute to any other points of discussion as we move forward. Thank you, Nagarjuna.
Yeah, thank you, Srini. One question that always in the mind of people like us is again the same issue, is that there are a lot of entrepreneurs, not only entrepreneurs actually, a lot of multinational companies, use free software and develop very large integrated systems. System integration is a very big area for a large number of places, and most of the entrepreneurs actually are system integrators. They do that job, they do provide those things, but as always been mentioned more than once, even during today's discussion, is that many of them are actually becoming some kind of they want to extract the value of FOSS into them, but they're not actually sort of contributing back, and this is, I think, a big issue. So how do you address this issue, Srini? Or is it a pseudo problem?
Thank you, Nagarjuna, for pointing out the real problem. Let me put it once again. Yeah. Okay. Yes, the contribution part is a big problem, as rightly pointed out by Anivar, Nagarjuna, and I think some part of it by Samuel. So how do we address this is, in our incubator, what we advise the incubators is that during their period of incubation, they should contribute a certain extent to that project or the application which they are trying to make use of for commercial purposes. So this is one point where. Second thing is, yes, in spite of all our efforts, we find that contribution is still lacking. But in the case of whatever works which we are doing, we make sure that all our projects are properly put it in the contribution pot. So trying to address it from the college or the institution level, that is where I requested that the students can be given opportunities to contribute into some of these projects, which put up a great impact on their CV when they apply for their jobs. So that is the way it can be addressed. That's what I feel, and I have been encouraging this personally for some of the student groups through my IEEE and IEEE Computer Society aspects, and I have seen that a lot of students, including my son, actually, they have been working on this, and they're trying to slowly they come into a contribution by at the end of second or third year, and they are able to put up some contribution into the projects. So to make a contribution, they have to actually get enthusiastic with these type of projects. So both aspects we are doing. On our works, we are contributing, or on our incubator side, we are promoting that. And for the student communities, we will try to encourage this. Hope I have answered that point.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Srini. So we have sort of come to an end of what the panelists wanted to say. There is one major issue that actually one of the major challenges today in the FOSS communities is that a large number of IT related services are moving to the cloud. And this is a very big challenge for the FOSS community. And this is also is one major reason for the threats of both data security as well as privacy and many other issues. In fact, the largest privacy violators are those companies which have integrated FOSS technology and created cloud services. It's an embarrassing situation for FOSS, and therefore it is really one of the largest challenges. So, you know, those of you who are tinkering with distributed and decentralized systems, please take a note of that, because we do really have a very serious need for creating decentralized infrastructures across the world, and creating that kind of infrastructure actually echoes very well with sustainable technology models, and we need to keep that in mind as well. And I think it's time for us to listen to some questions from the faculty. So please unmute yourself or raise hand or ask in the public chat so that the panelists would be able to address some of your questions. And also at the same time, if panelists have any questions. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Am I audible? Hello.
Yes, Anwar, you are audible.
In between I got disconnected. Yeah.
Yeah, Rajiv wants to ask some question.
No, sir. No. Actually, I answered the.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah.
Nagarjun, I like to add a bit some of the points. Is it the right time or later? Is he available or lost?
I think he lost connection.
Okay. So yeah, few points in addition to the earlier short session on a bit of critics. So basically, I represent here Swadhantra Malayalam Computing. Last year, some of the discussions here are around FOSS and business as well as how to sustain, right? So last year we went through similar kind of process. SMC is one among the earliest free software communities in India. So we are close to 20-year-old community now. So we were thinking about what happened to FOSS, especially around 2015-16 time. So as many pointed here, the number of products got increased. Automatically, communities changed into more as a user community around products. So how to move forward and how to be relevant and how to make sure that the values of FOSS will be preserved. So this is and even when we are looking at SMC is basically a set of 5 different type of communities. One, there is a developer community. Other developer community who are building NLP solutions, who are building the Android-based keyboards, the developer libraries, a lot of other stuffs, including many award-winning solutions and everything. So in other side, we have an active localizers group, which contributes to many FOSS projects, including, for example, when Signal is getting popular, signal interface is totally available in Malayalam. It's basically SMC's work. So that way, so similarly, I think we are contributing nearly 20 localization projects, but at the same time, over a period of time, this became small groups contributing to FOSS, contributing to Signal, contributing to maybe discourse localization. So mainly or GNOME localization. So this became small subsets. Then another kind of projects we noticed is we have an active open data group within SMC. We have an active open street map group. So basically, all of them but at the same time, these became small discussion groups separately. Even though it's a close-knit community, the discussions happens elsewhere, not within a part of community. But at the same time, what discussion happened within the community is basically the discussion around products. It can be phones or input method. It can be in around about Indie keyboard, the Indian language keyboard used by 2.5 million people. Or it can be around OLAM. OLAM is also an SMC project. And I think there is a mention of Kailash, Sirodas Kailash post on FOSS infrastructure. Kailash is also an SMC member. So we were discussing about how to reactivate this community or reactivate the conversations between small communities split around the products. So then we started building a discourse around it, and so there is a discourse instance called community.smc.org.in. Each these 5 communities, which basically the product communities, the developer communities, the open data communities, OpenStreetMap communities, and and there is a most important part, which is basically the common element which brings together all these communities are mission-driven people. And in most of the FOSS projects, what I usually see missing is the insistence around this mission-driven people. So these are the people who contribute back to FOSS. Those are the people who link existing communities. Let it be business, let it be open data, let it be each and every localization. Bringing this together is basically a mission-driven task. So cultivating a community of mission-driven people is the challenge in front of any FOSS organization. Let it be IC4, let it be ITH school, whichever. So as faculties of IC4, I think you may need to invest time on building this mission-driven aspect within the people. Why ITH school surviving now? It's still run by the same mission-driven people who are active as a part of syllabus preparation, who are active part of maybe Ubuntu customization. Even so, those people are still sustaining in ITH school. IC4 failed to make that kind of a mission-driven people as a big set. There is enough small set of people, but you need to build that color set. So last 1 year around FOSS in business, I think I was not discussing about SMC alone. So SMC is now building now in the process of cultivating more mission-driven people through a digital literacy program. That if you are interested in discussing any of these aspects, there are monthly calls happening of each and every 5 communities. You can join the calls. You can try every month at least 1 or 2 calls happening in all these 5 communities. And in FOSS and business, I think the focus around products, is what results in it may be helping in building the communities and active set, but at the same time, it is mostly user communities. Contributing back is basically need to be done through, I think, this cultivating a mission-driven values around it, building so this is where I spent some effort personally in last 1 year. So there is an active in a free software project called ERPNext. They had a foundation called ERPNext Foundation. Similarly, Zeroda is there. Kailash is a SMC member. We are all in discussions. So those discussions resulted in basically changing ERPNext Foundation as FOSS United Foundation last year. We conducted a FOSS hackathon last year during the time of COVID. We invited IC4 to be part of it, but IC4 didn't show interest at that point of time. It was basically bringing FOSS elements in industry together under the FOSS United leadership. So that resulted in a lot of contributions. So similarly, I think last year January, we conducted the India OS conference, in which many of the Kerala projects also participated. And the Rebuild Kerala initiative, I think there was Bishwas, FOSS United given a grant also for starting that, continuing that project as Rebuild Earth. We also supported the developer cultures like developer communities like Tinker Hub, and building something like a digital equity related work among many of the groups based upon the free and open source solutions. So basically, an industry gathering around FOSS is already happening. There is also national level community coming together happening, at least developer communities and industry coming together. Active FOSS people are now appointed as for staff like Anand Chittipotu and Vishal and similar kind of people. So there is a national collective around FOSS in industry, that's now FOSS United Foundation, and they are doing a lot of activities around it. You can participate in those activities. Also, try to engage with FOSS United for how to join forces together. And in FOSS, the business part, I think how businesses can contribute back is the value creation happening there. I think Kerala Startup Mission also can learn a lot from how FOSS United built up as a organization last 1 year and bringing industry together with community on that part. Many of us are working around that as volunteers or building that kind of a community building, and as well as the value creation, because when after the COVID, when the industry interested in finding low-cost solutions, and now the interest is around building low-cost solution instead of buying a lot of subscriptions or cloud-based solutions. Building capacities themselves is also an interesting point of time now. So there is how to build your DevOps structure totally based upon free software, and how you can find expertise from the industry for your DevOps stack. As Nagarjuna pointed out earlier, it's basically bringing pieces together, right? Bringing FOSS pieces together, and it's mostly a DevOps pipeline. So there is, but at the same time, when you focus on products alone, leaving the DevOps or service industry around FOSS. Historically, Kerala have its expertise around the service industry. So if you leave the service industry and focusing only on the final products, it's not going to build a FOSS culture. If you focus on building a business culture around DevOps cycle and building people and stacks around DevOps structure, then that can build a lot of change. And those stacks can be utilized even for government. We have seen a lot of discussions around for even disaster responses, a lot of other stuff, right? So,
Anivar, there is a specific question from Murali.
Okay.
Asking what can SMC contribute to the students as developers?
So what SMC basically have a listing of active projects in which you can contribute, which we have our set of high priority projects. And now we are also, SMC is also, I think, right now inviting interns, which will be closed very soon. So we need multiple kind of expertise for some of our projects. So talk to us if anyone interested. So we can assign you to the projects we may be both comfortable with. And we can also provide mentorship on those projects. We also, the expertise available with us is also have a limited time, right? So we can't do all the student help, but at the same time, quality students, we can select and direct them to some of our available tasks, which may be entry level or which may be higher level based upon their experience.
Yeah, thank you, Anivar. Yeah. Any questions or any other interventions from the panelists? Shirley, Srinivas, Vishal, Samuel, Ashish, would like to add anything to the discussions? And also again, request if there are any questions from the participants. I think there was a request to ask, specifically, can I ask Ratish and Reshma ma'am, you want to? Yes, please.
Yes, sir.
I think Ratish and Reshma.
Good morning, sir.
Maybe Ratish and then Reshma. Yes. Yeah. Please go ahead, Ratish.
Yeah, I'm Ratish speaking, sir. I'm Ratish speaking. I was keep on listening to all the views of all the panel members, and the most interesting things that I felt to be, the things that I felt to be interesting. Like one was about the internship at institutions, as Arjuna sir has pointed out, and then about upstream communities, availability of different communities to help students as well as the developers. And about, as Srini sir has said, conduct FOSS projects, etc. So these points I found to be very interesting, and I have got some concerns from the as the faculty coordinator of FOSS Cell at our institution. I have got a different set of concerns, maybe because of my lack of expertise in this area. Sir, the thing is, students, especially from the non-CSIT background students, they are not is that of CSIT students. They think that FOSSL is something which is only for students from the CSIT stream. That's one of the concern of them. Another thing is, most whenever we think of programs at institutions, at our institution, programs be like, it is in a repetitive and a passive like manner. Like either we conduct a training, some training programs on some FOSS tools, or we conduct workshops. These are the usual things that we do. We just wanted to conduct some creative, something creative at institutions, so that a student do something, can experience something. Like so, can finding programs in this aspect is another difficulty that we are facing. So can you all suggest some programs? Can you suggest some solutions for these concerns? That's from my side, sir.
Okay. Any of the panelists like to answer the question from Ratish, specifically about what do you do for students who are not from the CS or IT?
Yeah, Srini here. Can I take up that? My comments on that?
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, Ritish, it's quite interesting that you touched upon the exact issues coming up before the faculty. I must say that gone are the days of where we all worked in silos, like mechanical department, computer science department, electronics department, civil department, like that. That's silos. Now we are talking about interdisciplinary activities, and we should move to that. Definitely, the contribution part of FOSS can be engaged with more of IT related departments, for example, CS or IT, like that, on the contribution part. But on the consumption part, we definitely can encourage other departments to make use of that. So that is why we try to promote open source tools among other department students and as such. Again, I would like to stress the point that let them come with let the other departments come out with the typical solution requirements, and then the FOSSEL can actually suggest some of the tools available in the open source front which can be made use of. So that way we can promote this activity among all the departments. And especially when you take up the final year projects, I have seen the trend happening in some of the engineering colleges now, wherein the projects are being dealt by multiple branch students. Like you have a mechanical engineering student, you have a computer science student, electronics student coming together to address a problem. And there you find that most of the people together, they start using more of open source software solutions and hardware solutions. So I think that is the way forward which we can address. On one side, we can promote the consumption. On the other side, we can promote the contribution. That's the point from my side. Again, based on the experience I have within ICFOSS on promoting Open IoT.
Yeah, thanks for that. And even apart from consumption aspect of the non-IT CS students, I think it's also important that they can also participate in the production components. For example, a large number of sensors that we use, come from the expertise of electronics people. And a large number of projects that are used in the IoT sector and robotics, etc., require expertise from mechanical engineers as well as from electronics people. And in fact, oftentimes I found that even mathematicians are required to solve some problems within. And recently at our lab, we started this initiative of developing scientific instruments. Like as simple as a spectrophotometer, colorimeter, thermometers, and soil testing, and other things, and which are also part of the large number of IoT projects. But at the same time, communication engineering people can be brought in because a lot of IoT is about communication. And data collected has to be analyzed, and that is where we need a lot of mathematical modeling and building graphs and things like that. So mathematicians can also be invited. Scientists can be invited to solve modeling issues that are related to it. So there is absolutely a lot of scope there. So do look at some of the project challenges that are posted on metastudio.org as well. To basically, we have to, as Srini said, we have to work without the borders here. There's nothing like CS and IT is one group and the other engineerings are there. Actually, there is no even difference between IT engineers and the scientists who are working, because the scientists also need these things, and you can also start addressing their problems, because ultimately some of them will be using the instruments that you guys would be actually developing. I think let's listen to Reshma's questions. Reshma ma'am, please ask your question as well.
Okay, thank you, sir. So I am a faculty from college in Kerala. So my question is, the major challenge that we face in the academic setting, like I find, is that hard to adapt to change. That is, many people, like mostly the teachers here, not in CS or other IT firm, as Regis sir pointed, many other faculty members, they find it very difficult to switch from the proprietary Windows to the open source, as well as I find like still many of the lab activities have been done in Turbo C. For C, they use it as a compiler, and not in CS or IT, but in other branches. And also in last year, our institution purchased 8 lakhs rupees, like renewed the license of MATLAB for rupees 8 lakh, and that can be done with Scilab or Python language. So this was the scenario currently in many of the institutions, that we go and purchase and we waste a lot of stuff in like money in behind these proprietary softwares, and how can we overcome this? How can we we do conduct various force promotion, force awareness, and students do participate in it, and we as teachers they are they are not so familiar, not nice CS or IT, but other field. They are not familiar with this, and they do lack actually. And this is the scenario here in many of the institutions.
Yeah, I think it's an important question that you have raised, and actually, the if you have FOSSI, and Anwar has also mentioned the link here, is IIT Bombay has this group which is specifically looking at addressing the issues that you have asked. And there are a large number of tutorials developed by them about using both Python as well as the science related tools. A lot of them, particularly related to replacement tools for MATLAB and Mathematica and things like that. So, of course, you may be already aware of them. Just having awareness, of course, is not sufficient. So, almost a large number of sets of problems are demonstrated there as being solved and solvable by these free software solutions, and that is, of course, addresses only part of the problem. The other part of the problem is to empower the faculty to use them. So at least the assurance that there is sufficient documentation to migrate. But of course, I completely agree with you about the education system is possibly one of the most robust systems that resists any change out there. All of us experience this, as if they're actually being vaccinated for change. They're so immune to change, and so that's one of the issues that we have to tackle. Unfortunately, a resilient system, a resilience in any system comes only when we are willing to change. That doesn't mean that we change it to an extent that there is no conservation of anything within the system. But so to that extent, there would be some resistance that is required, but not the kind of resistance that you see within the education system. I think that's a very important thing. That why is it that the teachers are so immune to change, when learning actually happens only when you change your conceptual schemes? It's a kind of ironical question we have. Anyone else wants to reply to Reshma from the panel?
Yeah, Srini here. May I?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for putting the question, Reshma, right about it. What I would like to suggest here is try to put up small projects which makes use of the FOSS tools for solving some of the problems. Let the curriculum, like you have MATLAB, we all know why MATLAB is being promoted and things like that. I don't think we should provide any resistance to that type of promotion from corporate or anything, but showing results in the other way, where FOSS Cells can promote some of those activities by offering some of the small projects. Now, the satisfaction out of delivering should be given to the kids. something to be delivered. Something, see, all the kids, as far as I can understand, uh, uh, they will be quite happy when they are able to deliver something and they can put a name on that and saying that, okay, I have completed this on this aspect. On the faculty side, what we need to do is try to increase the number of faculty members who can be part of this solution provider network. Like, say, slowly then slowly I think the passion will increase to some extent. As Nagarjuna pointed out, it is quite tough, but we can definitely work towards this direction.
Sure, sir.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, Vishal.
Yes, sir. There was a question for me
Yeah.
from Murli sir. There's still a gap between academy and industry. How we can fill this gap using these communities? So we in Technopark there is an organization named GTech. It's a group of technology companies. So they are right now coming up with a new initiative known as ATFG. It's like a academic focus group, academic technology focus group. So they are currently focusing to the problems which are facing by these academic institutions, where they are having some lag between the industry and the academy. So they have good program. So I can give the link in this chat box. I think there is an option to give the chat. So you can go through this link and connect to Mr. Deebu or the person who is handling this thing. So they will help you to get connected with the industry and academy thing. Hello.
Yeah. Thank you, Vishal.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. The link is pasted also. Yeah. Yeah. We're also looking for suggestions, not only questions from the faculty.
Sir, there was a question earlier in the chat box. Murli sir has asked about communities. Like communities are there to help students, but how can we connect? How can we connect to such communities? Like that, such a concern has raised by Murli sir. I think it can.
See, communities are largely distributed in the sense that, there are about 20,000 FOSS projects across the world. Actually, the number of projects are even more than that, but at least, active and vibrant projects across the world. Now, if you try to find communities only in Kerala, it's not going to work. I am of the view that these 20,000 projects are 20,000 universities. Consider each of these upstream developing projects as one place where you can go and learn. So what you do, for example, is to go to their website, of the project website, and almost all these places the membership is free. You can just register, join their discussion groups. They have either a discourse group, or they have a developer community. They have a mailing list or something like that. Join there and listen to them first. Listen to their conversations, because every day a lot of posts will be poured in, and then slowly become part of that thing, because you have decided to specialize in some particular area, so you should be able to be part of that. So this is the way how how do you become part of a community? This is exactly how you get into a community. And of course, there are local communities already available. For example, SMC runs community.smc.org.in, where you can join and you can actually ask this kind of questions there. By just becoming a member there, you just ask this kind of questions, and somebody will help you. If you can't locate your community, you can actually ask this question there, and you'll be able to answer that as well. And we also run a portal, as you can see. I already pointed out earlier that metastudio.org is also a place where you can just post a question, then somebody from the community will find a community for you. So so the world is open. As I said, higher education institutes and colleges themselves may not be able to solve all your problems. So if you are looking for a local community, you may not be able to find it. But for everything, there is a big community. There is an IoT community. There is a Arduino community. There is a Python community, and within Python there is scientific computing community, and there is NLP community, natural language processing community, and we have excellent expertise within SMC for that. And there are a lot of people who are very actively working on protecting privacy. So privacy protection communities are also there across all these places. So communities are actually there, but you won't expect all the communities to be in and around Kerala. You will find them all over the place. And all these places are so good in inviting people who are novices. They answer questions from novices to experts right there. So I think it's a very important question. And in fact, I have a feeling that the universities have done their job, but they have also done damage. By not listening to the community. They have built walls between the community and the universities. So it's not just the problem of industry not interacting with academics, or academics not interacting with the industry. Actually, the universities have actually isolated themselves from the large society. They're completely alienated systems. The only way they can survive is to, crack the walls and develop communities of practice, as people call it, COP. Communities of practice is the solution, and only that will actually, it's a question of survival for the universities. As you can see, there's hardly any quality remaining inside universities. The reason for that is because they stop listening to the community needs. They're just producing graduates. They're actually not, they stop listening from the people. And there is a crisis of higher education across the world. And only those higher education institutes are surviving who are listening to the needs of the people. Okay, I think now I will pass this back to ICFOSS organization, and thanks all of you for inviting. On behalf of all the panelists, I again express my gratitude for giving an excellent opportunity to exchange our views with all the panelists. Over to Kailash, or maybe if Professor Elizabeth Shirley wants to say something towards the end, please go ahead.
Ma'am, are you there? Or any of the other panel members want to add something? Okay, so I think now we can conclude the session, right? Okay, so then we can move to the official thanks note from Felicia.
Thank you all. On behalf of ICFOS, I extend a very hearty thanks to the honorable delegates who blessed us with their presence during the discussion and for taking out the valuable time of your busy schedule. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for each and every members for the valuable inputs. I first want to acknowledge the panel members for serving as a speaker for this FDP. Please take up our token of appreciation in the form of virtual mementos. Thank you. Mr. Nagarjuna ji.
Thank you.
Please
Thank
take
you.
up our token of Ma'am, please accept our token of appreciation. Mr. Srinivasan, sir, please accept our token of appreciation.
Thank you.
Mr. Anivar A. Aravind. Sir, please take up our token of appreciation.
Thank you.
Mr. Vishal B. Sir, please take up our token of appreciation. And Mr. Samuel John. Sir, please accept our virtual memento. And finally, Mr. Ashish Abraham Joseph. Sir, please accept our virtual memento. Once again, thank you all for being with us today. Thank you. The Day4